that you need to learn. It's well worth getting all major chords to the point where you can play them without thinking and see all 3 notes of the triad as one shape. It helps when it comes to playing songs, reading, memorizing stuff, playing chords in different ways. Once you've got them down, you can use them as a really useful visual framework to create other chord types by just adding notes on or adjusting notes in the chord. That makes learning new chords way easier. In this lesson, we're just going to concentrate on the chords in their original form called root position, which is just one of each note in order. That's the most useful thing to get solid at first. I've got a worksheet too linked in the description, which has got a complete list of all the major and minor chords, as well as a reminder of the practice methods. And I might do a practice play along video too to test how fast you can find these chords. So if that's something you think might be useful, please let me know in the comments by just typing play along. So this is more about the practical side of learning to find them fluently and getting used to the different shapes that they make in all the different keys. I've also got a more theory-based video which is really important to learn too, and that's linked down in the description below. Chords that start on the black notes, sometimes we could either use the flat version or the sharp version. Some are more common than others, but we're going to learn both here. The weird thing is though that sometimes when you get a white note in the chord, occasionally you have to call it a sharp or a flat, or sometimes like a double sharp. Now I'll put all the correct chord spellings in so you have it, but really at this stage of learning it's far more important just to be able to find the start note and see the shape. Don't get too hung up on the correct spelling at this stage, you can worry about that another time. Basically, concentrating on one thing at a time is far more beneficial to learning this kind of stuff. We'll start with C major. You might already know this one, but I'm going to use this as an example to talk about some basic technique and finger positions you can use. So when you're playing chords and bringing multiple notes down together, you really want to be using your wrist weight to make sure that all your fingers come down at exactly the same time. That way it sounds nice and clean like this. So keep your wrist in this nice kind of curved position. Keep your fingers relaxed, but just a tiny bit firm so they don't buckle. A really important trick is to make sure that you're holding your arm weight over the keyboard so your wrist and your fingers can dangle down and relax. That way they can mold comfortably and loosely into the shapes that they need to make. Also make sure that you're not pulling your hand back too far so you don't have to go at some weird angle to reach all the notes. Go far enough forward so that you can keep your wrist and your hand in as straight a position as possible. And make sure that the movement is going straight down, not at this kind of angle. So for fingers, there's not one set way to do this. There's 2 ways that I think are most useful for beginners to start doing, and that is finger 1, finger 2, and then finger 4, or finger 1, finger 3, and finger 5. A lot of beginners I've seen instinctively do 1, 2, 3 because it's just a little bit easier to get to grips with, and sometimes you will need that, and they also sometimes do 2, 3, 5, and again you will sometimes need to use that if your thumb needs to get down here, for example, in a song. But those first 2 I mentioned are sometimes harder for beginners to get, and you're going to need them quite a lot, so are going to be most useful for beginners to practice. But like I said at the start, you really want to be able to play these chords comfortably in lots of different ways. With your left hand, again, I think the most useful finger positions for beginners to get used to is 1, 2, 4 and 1, 3, 5. But also have a play around with 1, 2, 3 and 2, 3, 5 as well. So C major is C, E and G. The next one, we'll call it D flat major first, is D flat, F and A flat. And again, try this in a couple of different finger positions. 1, 3, 5. Try 1, 2, 4. And of course you can try those other ones as well. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 5. We could also call this chord C sharp, in which case this note here we would have to call E sharp, because if you notice F is actually 1 half step above E, so technically you can call it E sharp as well. So C sharp, E sharp and G sharp. So we always want these major chords to be built by stacking thirds or every other letter of the alphabet. So this way C to E goes over the space of 3 letters, and then E to G also goes over the space of 3 letters. It means that chord shapes always look the same when you write them on sheet music as well. Also with these black chords, the thing I said about keeping your hand forward is much more important because people tend to come at it at a bit of an angle like this. What you want to do is see everything before you put your hand down, go far enough forward so that keeps your hand straight, even if you play this note here right up there, and come down using your arm weight. Remember to keep your wrist nice and relaxed. The next one is D major, so that's D, F sharp and A. And we're calling it F sharp, not G flat, because of that rule I mentioned a second ago about thirds. D to F goes over the space of 3 letters. So with this one, make sure you're not touching the black note right on the edge. Come slightly more forward like that to get a solid grip. So the next one is E flat. We'll call it E flat first. E flat, G, and B flat. Or we could call it D sharp. And in this case, this note, to follow our rule, would have to be F double sharp. So if you imagine an F, you've sharpened it by moving it up 1/2 step, and then you sharpen it again by moving it up another 1/2 step. So the note is a G, but the correct spelling would be F double sharp. Then the next note is A sharp. Now that spelling for the chord is not going to come up as much as the E flat spelling. And like I said, focus on the shape more. Technique wise, it's going to be just like the D flat was because they form a really similar shape on the piano and it feels just the same under your fingers. The next chord is an E major. So we've got E, G sharp and B. G sharp, not A flat because of the rule. Technique wise, again, this is the same shape as the D was. Then we have F major, F, A and C. F sharp major, F sharp, A sharp, and C sharp. With major chords, we don't mix flats and sharps, and again, those note names follow the rule I mentioned earlier. If we call it the G flat version, it would be G flat, B flat, and D flat. Those two spellings are both pretty common. Technique-wise, this feels similar to the white notes. You just need to keep your hand in a nice straight line. The next chord is G major. We've got G, B, and D. And that's just the same shape that the F and the C was. Then we've got A flat major, so we'd spell that A flat, C, and E flat. Or if we called it G sharp, it would be G sharp, and you'd have to call this C a B sharp to spell it correctly, and then this would be a D sharp. And technique-wise, this is the same shape as the E flat and the D flat was, so it should feel just the same under your fingers. Then we have A, C sharp, and E. Again, it's C sharp, not D flat because of the thirds rule. B flat major would be B flat, D, and F. Or the alternate spelling would be A sharp, C double sharp, and E sharp. That spelling's not going to come up anywhere near as much though, so again, focus on just finding the start note and following the shape. Now this shape is slightly different from the others, but again, the trick is to really just to come far forward enough to keep your hand in a nice straight line. If you connected the notes, they look like they make this kind of angle, but don't be tempted to put your wrist at that angle. You want to keep it nice and straight. And then the last one is B major. We have B, D sharp, and F sharp. And again, it's D sharp, not E flat, and F sharp, not G flat because of the thirds rule. B to D is 3 letters away, and D to F is 3 letters away. So here's a couple of tricks to finding, practicing, and memorizing these more easily. I like to use the outside 2 notes as a shell for seeing the chord clearly, and an advantage to this is it actually works for the minor chords too when you come to practice those. The distance or spacing between these 2 notes, known as an interval, is called a fifth. It goes over 5 letters, and if that doesn't make much sense to you at the moment, after this video, head over to my How to Build Major and Minor Chords Theory video in the description. That will make everything clear. But basically, it's 5 letters away: C, D, E, F, G. All of these chords, when they're in root position, have a fifth as the outside 2 notes. And apart from 2 exceptions, they're always matching colours, either both black or both white. And they always look and feel like the same kind of distance. And the 2 exceptions are B flat to F and B to F sharp, where the colours are opposite. They all kind of look and feel like the same distance apart on the keyboard. And taking a practical approach, which we are, you want to just try and get used to the feel of this distance so that the next one up, a 6th, would just feel too big, and the next one down, a 4th, would just feel too small. Because of the size of the gap, I think this is easier than counting how many half steps away it is. And then once you have your 5th, you can fill in the middle note by jumping 2 whole steps or 2 tones from the root. 1, 2. 2 whole steps is the same as 4 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's just quicker to jump the whole steps though. That's called the major third, and again, check the theory video in the description to understand that properly if you're not sure. And you can always just practice those major thirds on their own if you need to by picking any random note and then finding the next note that's 2 whole steps away. So from D, that would be 1, 2. From F, it would be A, 1, 2. From E flat, it would be G, 1, 2. These different shapes that get created on the piano are one of the challenges of learning, so it's really useful to practice it so you can see them comfortably. As it's important to eventually see these chords as just one block though, I prefer this method because it forces you into that wider view. But after teaching lots of people, I know that different people click with some different approaches sometimes, so I'll give you another way of thinking about it as well. You can also just take the starting root note, in this case C, and then find the next note by stacking a major third, which is 2 whole steps, 1, 2. And then from there, stacking a minor third, which is 1.5 whole steps, 1.5. You'll get the same result, but I find this way has led people to look a bit too zoomed in and think step by step too much, losing track of the wider view and the shape as a whole. This can convert to minor chords as well by reversing the pattern, but I think the first method just does that even simpler by switching the middle note. I think the other one is more effective in the long run too when it comes to learning more chords in the future, but whatever works best for you is the right answer. We can also think of making these chords by playing every other note from the start of a major scale, but I think I'm going to save that topic for another day because it's sort of going down a learning rabbit hole a little bit. A useful memory trick is to divide the 12 major chords into 4 groups. The 3 major chords that are all white notes, which are C, F and G. The 3 that go white, black, white, which are D, E, and A. I sometimes call those the triangle shapes because if you connected the dots, it would form a triangle. The 3 that go black, white, black, which are D flat, E flat, and A flat. Sometimes call those the upside down triangle shapes. And then the 3 odd ones out, which are unique shapes. G flat, all black notes, B flat, black, white, white, and B, white, black, black. These shape groups can be really useful for practicing memorizing these chords because they give you more manageable chunks to work with. And you get used to making those similar shapes but just from different notes. To practice, you could just go through each group individually and focus on one group per session. So for example, one day you could just do the white note ones, C, F and G. Then the next day, do the triangle shapes, D, E and A. And so on. If one group feels harder to get to see or to play technically, focus on that one more. Then when you're more comfortable, you can try 2 groups together, 3, and then all of them. Remember to spend time on each hand so both get used to molding into the shapes comfortably. Another great practice method is to go up and down in half steps. For example, playing C, D flat, D, E flat, E, up and down, and so on. Start as slow as you need and then try and speed it up. You could start from C one session and then pick random notes to start from another time. If all 12 is too much to start with, you could just go up 2 and then 3 and then 4 and so on. Or you could start C and do the first 3 one day and then the next day focus on the next 3. Divide it up how you like. Try a few different things out and whatever works best for you is the best thing to do. To make it more interesting and for an extra challenge, put a metronome on or a backing track, and you could even add some rhythm to it as well to make it more interesting. Make sure you spend a bit of time on each hand so they both get some experience molding into these different kind of shapes. If you know the circle of fifths or the circle of fourths, you can always use that as a practice method to make sure that you hit every key, but that is a bit harder because you have to follow the order as well, so no worries if you're not familiar. Finally, you want to test yourself on finding random chords. If you have someone to help you, that's even better. They can pick a random chord name for you, or you could just think of one or find one out of a hat, and then you have to find it on the piano as quick as you can. Then check if it's correct, and you can use my worksheet for that, or just Google it. You should also practice this the other way around to get good at recognizing shapes that you see in parts of music. This is a little bit harder to do on your own unless you make flashcards or something of the pictures of the chords. But if you have someone to help, they could play the chord on the piano for you and then you have to name it as quick as you can. Doing it both ways helps mimic a wider range of practical applications learning music. Look out for these shapes appearing in music that you're learning, because applying your knowledge like that and understanding what's happening with music allows you to learn stuff way more quickly and memorize things because you understand it a lot more and you're speaking the language. I don't speak German, but I could probably memorize a paragraph with some practice, but it would be way easier for me to memorize that same paragraph in English because I understand what everything means. Don't forget the worksheets available in the description, the theory video. The next video up will be on the minor chord shapes. Let me know in the comments if this video was useful, and please give it a like if it was, because that really helps the channel start to grow. Subscribe for more content that's going to help you develop your piano playing. Thanks for watching.